Good afternoon, everyone. Here in the virtual world, in the spiritual world, in the future, no, because they are recording, so we don't know when they are going to see this. It is a great joy for me as a speaker and for us, the spirits that are here supporting us as speakers, to talk about a little bit, to give some insights of the life of Francis of Assisi. It's most commonly known by Saint Francis of Assisi, since the Catholic Church canonized him after his death. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring some facts from his biography. We're going to learn his philosophy of life. We're going to see why he was canonized 2 years after he discarnated, which is super quick according with the Vatican. They can take even 200 years to canonize someone. So this was really, and what is the impact of his message in today's life, in our life, as of right now, okay? So we're going to start with history. Francis of Assisi, he was born Francesco di Pietro di Bernardone. Sorry for my Italian. He was born in a small town called Assisi. So when he was born, his father, who was a merchant or someone who was working with his business of fabric and some other items, he was abroad in France. So mom decided to name him Giacomo. However, when the father returned, he got mad and said, no, we need to change his name to Francis to honor France. And actually, Francis means the French man. So, or Francisco in Spanish, that's what it means, basically. So his name was changed to Francis instead of Giuseppe, I'm so sorry, Giuseppe, which means John in the English language and Juan in the Spanish one. And here we have in the picture below, his home, the real home in Assisi, and over there is a statue of him, and we will see why he is in a horse, all sad and downcast. So some facts. 1181, 1182, he is the year of when he was born. He passed away on October 3rd of 1226 in the same town. He was canonized on July 16, 2028, and his feast day or his celebration in the Catholic Christian world is in October 4th, which is actually the celebration for nature, also an ecological celebration. And in 1979, Pope John Paul II recognized him as the patron saint of ecology, because he has a lot of things to do with our current ideas of ecology. Something else. Francis learned to read and write Latin, acquired some knowledge of French in language, literature, and he loved the troubadours. And why this fact it is important? Because we're talking medieval times. Medieval times, if we take a look to Europe, 98% of the population, they were illiterate, or maybe we were there, right? We were illiterate with no access whatsoever to a writing communication or to a book. Most of the books or the writings were preserved with jealousy in convents and monasteries. So usually it was the religious people, some of them, that could learn how to write and read, and actually was handwriting. This is before Gutenberg came with the magic idea of the printer, right? So just by knowing that he received this type of education is telling us that he was special human being on planet Earth. He had this opportunity. His father was a wealthy merchant, so he said, okay, I'm going to give this education to my son so he can carry on business. Francis was a fantastic human being. According to his biographers, his personality was very attractive, and he had charisma and good sense of humor, and he was handsome, and he was happy all the time and joyful. And we were thinking, well, if I have also that type of life in medieval times, you know, I'm being spoiled by everybody, I have the basic needs covered, I would be joyful too. But he was joyful for something else. His spirit was like that, because even in the struggle, he kept this joyfulness with him. And when he grew up and he was like a teenager, a young adult, he became a leader of the youth, of younger people in the town. So they were some sort of attracted to him. Something was special about him. In 1202, it was a war between two towns in Italy, Assisi and Perugia. So it was a great honor for a man to go to war. And you needed to have money to go to war. This was something that called our attention, because it was the time of being a knight. So you need to get all the armor that they have, and that costs money. So in order to become a knight, you need to have money. And of course, Francis' dad, Don Bernardone, he was like, okay, my son, go with your shining armor and go to the war. Unfortunately, it was a disaster for Assisi. They lost. Francis, among some other few young gentlemen, they were kept captive because they killed everybody that they captured, except for a group of them that they knew they were the children of people with money. So they were planning, the Perugia people, they were planning to ask for some rescue, some sort of things. So by being in captivity, it was at least more than 6 months. This experience started the period of transformation of Assisi, of Francis. Because Francis, he was all about business, all about having fun, all about being handsome, all about like, I have this group of people following me. Pretty much he wanted to conquer the world with the sword. But by this experience, he started thinking like, maybe I want something different, but it wasn't really clear in his mind. In 1205, it was the Fourth Crusade. So this was the time of the Crusades, in which Catholic Church believed that they needed either to save or to kill all of those who weren't Catholics. Who? The Muslims. So either they went to convert Muslims. If they didn't renounce to their faith, they were killed. That was basically it. But it was an honor for all these men to go to the Crusades. So it was a dream for Francis to go to the Crusade, and he asked his father for a golden armor and a beautiful cape, all embroidered in golden and silver thread. And he was very proud and going in his horse. And it was a long road from Italy, to Egypt and all this area in Africa, where, it's Egypt in Africa, but they were going to the Middle East. So during the journey, he didn't even leave Italy, because during the journey he started seeing beggars on the road, poor moms begging for a piece of bread for the kids, lepers, he starts seeing these people and like, so something is going on. He couldn't put a finger what was it, but he felt something in his heart. So he decided one day, he was riding his horse, he saw a leper begging for some money. So he decided to give this leper his cape, his beautiful, wonderful cape, and he put it on the leper. He rejected before this encounter the lepers. He didn't want them because, let us think, at the time they thought leprosy was contagious, or it was like a heaven don't like you, don't want you. So, however, he put the cape. This is a generous act of Francis' spirit. However, still Francis, the man, he was proud about this act because he was making sure it was in public and a lot of people was watching him. However, the biographers take this into account because it's, again, part of a process of transformation. So if we learn with Jasko last Saturday about Paul in the road of Damascus and how Paul see this light, right? He was persecuting Christians, etc. And then after this encounter with Jesus, he became blind and he started a process of inner transformation. And he needs to retire to the desert. That is a process. If we read the lives of St. Augustine, we also see a similar situation in which St. Augustine received a great education. He was in a noble family, and he was all about Paris, etc., etc. And he's having different incidents until he started getting this process of transformation. So it seems like all of us, we are going through this process of transformation. Like we have a natural tendency for progress, for evolution, for become a better person, but still there are some tendencies that are holding us back. That was happening with Francis. So it took a couple of years for him to get to the point of Saint Francis. So he has the encounter with the leper and he kissed the leper's hands, which is an unbelievable act of generosity. So although he makes sure, like, hey people, look what I am doing, at the same time he was so humble in his action with a lot of heart. So he turned back. He never made it to the crusade. And he's all downcast. He returns to Assisi. And Don Bernardone, his father, was very ashamed of Francis and was ashamed for the town. It was the worst thing that he could do to a group of people and to his family, because it was a lot of pride and honor on being a knight and investing money in all these armored things. And then the guy, he don't even left Italy. He just coming back. So Francis entered in a period of silence, like he doesn't want to talk to people. He retreats from his friends and he starts walking in the beautiful fields of Assisi, and he goes to the ruins of a very small church, more like a chapel, that is called San Damiano's Church. And he was meditating, praying there, when he hears a voice saying, "Francis, repair my church." He was looking around because he physically heard the voice. We know that is a type of mediumship. So he understood this as God is talking to me, and I need to repair this church. So he went, and this is Assisi nowadays. He went to his father's store. He started selling all this fabric for 50% off or less, and all the items. He got gold, he got things to get money to get materials to rebuild San Damiano's church. The reaction of the father was pretty much natural. It's like, what is going on with you? As a matter of fact, people start calling him the crazy man of Assisi, because everybody was thinking, oh, he lost his mind. This is not the Francis that we knew before him going to that trip to the crusade. So he sold everything, he got the money, he got the materials, and he started by his own hands trying to rebuild San Damiano's church. During the process, the father decided to take him to the authorities and say that Francis robbed his items, his articles from the store. Francis is like, no, this is a call from my father, I'm not robbing you. And the thing start becoming, it's heating up until one day, and this is I don't know if it's very clear, it's a picture. What is the pointing thing? Here is Francis, I don't know if we can see him, almost naked. So in the square town, Bernardone started screaming like, you're not my son anymore. I regret the day you were born. And Francis, I demand my money back. Francis was, okay, father, okay. So he took his clothes out and he said, you're not my father anymore because my only father is in heaven. I don't need this house anymore because my house is now Mother Nature. I don't need a roof over my head because now I have the sky. And my Father that is in heaven and that is providing food for the birds is going to provide for me. So yes, Father, I will return the money to you, but I won't call you my father again. And the poor mother was all in tears. Everybody was shocked. Francis walked out the town, skipping happily. They say that he only had a rope. Somebody in generosity covered him with a rope, and he left to San Damiano's to get the materials, to resell the materials and return the money to his father. On the road to San Damiano's, that was outside of Assisi on the fields, guess what? A group of thieves robbed his robe. He's again naked, literally. And they beat him up, etc. And the poor Francis is there on the road with nothing. There is a testimony of a friend that is a Thomas, that he was following him from far because he was concerned. And that is why we got to know of this account. So Francis lost conscious because he was beaten up. When he returned to himself, he kind of stand up, clean himself, and keep walking happily and joyful to San Damiano's church. Like nothing happened here. This is okay. I found my truth. I got to the essence of life. And no matter what is happening, what circumstances are in my life, I keep being happy and joyful because this is nothing comparing what I learned about my father. So this incident in the Assisi Square, also some other young people, they were witnessing this. And since that day, Francis started living by a simple rule that is called primitive rule. And basically it says to follow the teachings of our Lord Jesus Christ and to walk in his footsteps. So let us remember Francis, he had a charisma, a very charismatic personality. So some of the young people, and male young people, start following him. Francis became a preacher without receiving any religious education. Preaching was only reserved for the Catholic priests. But he started preaching on the fields to his friends, reminding them about Jesus' teachings of love and charity, love to one another, charity towards others, living with simplicity. So we're going to make a pause here in this story, and we are going to zoom out. And let us think. In his reincarnatory plan, because he's a spirit, what was his purpose of becoming Francis of Assisi? What was his purpose of coming to planet Earth at that time? Why was this? So again, let us remember, medieval times is also called a dark era, or the era of darkness, because we human beings, we were in darkness, spiritually speaking. The gospel of Jesus was reserved only for the priests of people that were in the Catholic Church. They were the only ones who had access to read a Bible. If someone else that could read the Bible, it was a sacrilege. And church at the time, they didn't really have a genuine interest in the progress and evolution of the spirits. They have an interest in maintaining good relationships with their governments. And we're talking about Italy, Spain, France, England, Germany, Europe in general. So having this good relationship between the government and the church, it will bring them a lot of comfort, a lot of money, and a lot of power. So basically, the more ignorant was the people, the better for us. Also during medieval times is when we got to know that the Gospels, they were cut, edited, or selected. That is, we know that is a fifth or sixth Gospel that is lost because it was taken out from the Gospels at that time. We also know that they create some editions about things related to heaven and hell. The whole idea of sin and going to hell, it was created during medieval times. Because they decide if we scare the people, first, they are not going to sin. Second, we will have this power. And if we see this from a spiritist point of view, somehow that is what the lower spirituality that lives very close to planet Earth, that is why they don't want us to grow. And that is why sometimes it is so difficult, because we have these natural friends to be or enemies that they don't want us to progress. It's when we made the resolution, oh, I got it, you know what? I understand. I need to move forward. And then we struggle and struggle and struggle, and sometimes we give up. The idea is to continue, because we have the help of the good spirits and good mentors. So Francis, his mission was to bring the basics and the simplicity of the gospel to Europe in that time. To let the people know that they are worthy and they are loved. To let people know that are in desperation. Imagine all these lepers, isolated, outcasts, how they will feel at the moment, with thirst in their hearts for comfort, for a loving word. So also, Francis bring the simplicity, and there's an important word in his work, because he wrote things, he wrote prayers, is also because the Catholic Church, it was all about appearances. It was all about of dressing in purple, dressing in red, having these huge rings. It was about the form and not the message. So they distance the pastors, the priests, the ones who are supposed to guide, the shepherds, they distance themselves. This is in general. Of course, it was good people at the time in the church, and we will see. But it is in general, right? So his mission was to renew, to relive the love in action, charity, and to demonstrate that we need very few to live well and to live happily. He went to the extreme of only wearing this robe, a pair of sandals, and that's it. He didn't know if he's going to eat that day, where he's going to sleep, nothing. At the point that he was 40-something when he passed away, because he was living in the outdoors since the day he left Assisi. But that was his decision because he wanted to get closer and he wanted to imitate Jesus. So the group started growing and growing and growing and growing and growing through Italy, to France, to England, to so many places that things were starting coming out of control, because just imagine 500 guys trying to follow one guy with one rule. So it was a lot of things that they need to be organized. And Francis, he wasn't really into this. However, Thomas and Leo, you're famous. This name is famous. And Leon, that later on, after Francis discarnate, Leo takes the leadership. They say, hey, Francis, we need to do something. We need to organize this because we are going to lose all that we have been doing. They start doing charity, caring for the sick, caring for the poor, begging food, not for themselves, for others, etc., etc. So they decide that they needed to create a congregation, and Francis and 11 other men, in total 12 of them, they walked from Assisi to Rome to see Pope Innocencio, or Innocent, and just begging him, basically, because they were, just imagine their physical appearance in the Vatican, begging him that if they could have a congregation legally with certain rules, etc., etc. At the beginning, Innocencio was like, what is this people? Why did you allow them to come into my presence? However, Francis, very smart and very persistent, told me, you need to sleep over this and tell us tomorrow what is your decision. That night, Innocencio dreams about a growing congregation called the Francis congregation. He saw in his dream, and it was very successful, spreading the good news of the gospel. So the next day, because of the dream, we know is the positive influence of the good spirits, Innocencio decided that he will approve the Franciscans to become a congregation. Through the years, Francis created 3 congregations, one for men, the Franciscans, another one for women called Clarissas, and the third one that is not very popular is for men or women that they didn't want to give up their families, like a guy who has a wife and kids. He wanted to follow Francis' teachings, but he didn't want to give up for his family. So it was a secular congregation, right? So St. Francis has so many beautiful stories. He started connecting with nature. Remember that he started preaching, and it was times, and when he went to a town, nobody paid attention to him, because he started preaching to the birds. And according to Thomas, he started preaching to the birds, and the birds start coming, and even, landing on his shoulders and arms, and they were very quiet when Francis was talking to them. So he has this magnetism that influences all beings. And he started calling my brother birds, sister moon, brother sun, brother wolf, sister cat, and all things in nature, they were brothers or sisters. And he had such a influence in nature that there is the anecdote of the wolf of Gubbia. Gubbia was a town in Italy, and they live of livestock. They have the sheep, the cows, etc. And they say there was a gigantic wolf. We don't know, it's a legend. It could be the regular wolf starving. So the wolf started attacking the livestock at the point they have to put all the livestock inside of the houses, so the wolf continued attacking, and this time people. So Gubbia was in horror and desperation. And here comes Francis with a calm, sweet demeanor and say, why are you desperate here, people? Oh, it's this horrible wolf, they're going to eat us. Oh, help us, it's a demon. He's like, show me, where is the wolf? No, Francis, don't go there. It's a big risk. You're going to be killed. This wolf has an insatiable appetite. Francis says, it's okay. So actually, Francis goes to the mountains, go to the caves, call the wolf, brother wolf. Again, because of his magnetism, the wolf came out. And he, with his mind, start a conversation with the wolf. Why are you doing this to the people? Don't you see they're good people? They're not doing anything bad to you. So the wolf replies to him. It's like a wolf whisper. I'm doing this because I'm starving. It is nothing else in these mountains that I can hunt. So therefore, I need to go to the town. And Francis tamed the wolf. At the point that he came down the mountain, go to Gubbia with the wolf like a puppy. The wolf was by his side like a very sweet, kind puppy. So Francis asked the Gubbia people, he said, I want for you to feed this wolf on a daily basis, like a dog. Just put a plate of something. Every day, make sure he has his food and he won't attack you or your livestock. And therefore, from that day on, the wolf didn't attack the people of Gubbia. And there are songs and there are books and there are children's books. There is a lot of stories around this because he had this, developed this connection with nature. He understood that all of us, we are created with the same element. Currently we call it the universal cosmic fluid. But it's very likely, like if we make an effort to connect with nature, just to see it and feel, we will have the same magnetism or communication with practice. Last night we were watching a movie, Avatar, in which is this imaginary planet, Pandora. Have you watched the movie, Avatar? We would recommend. It has very interesting elements. Avatar has a huge, gigantic tree, and with the roots very deep, and all the plants in the planet were connected to this tree like the neurons in a brain. But not only the plants, every living being on the planet was connected to this current of light, and in the planet it looks like it's light. So animals and the people from the planet, they are connected to the same source. So the inhabitants of Pandora, they have the power to connect with plants and with animals, and they have a little, I forgot the name, trenza, little piece of hair. Braid. And at the end of the braid, there are some hairs that you connected to this horse-like animal that also has the same. So it is a way in the movie to show that all of us, we are connected. And it's also a movie that promotes taking care of the planet. So that was basically what Francis discovered by being in constant contact with Mother Nature. One of the other beautiful things about Francis is he is the creator of the nativity. So why during Christmas we have a nativity? Like some cultures, they have the tradition of putting a nativity at home, right? It's because Francis, since people, they didn't have access to the gospel, to the Bible, he knew this. He read and he said, okay, I need to come out with a strategy to show people how beautiful it was when Jesus came to this world. So he decided that he will take someone's donkey and someone's cow, and he asked a friend to be Mother Mary, and so he created an alive nativity just to show people how it was. So he was a great teacher. That is a tool, an instrument of learning for a group of people that they didn't have access to books. They were farmers, they were people working with their hands, never seen or listened of these ideas of simplicity and love and beauty, living in fear because they were going to be punished in heaven. So he came out with this idea. Since then, alive nativities are a tradition around the world. And that is a good moment or activity to remember when Jesus came to this world. Right. So there are so many other anecdotes and histories about Francis of Assisi. Before we go to the next part, at the end of his life, his desire to become like Jesus, a humble desire, a genuine desire to serve others, it was so deep that one day he retired to the mountains. He retired from his group of friends. He said, I'm going to pray. And he was praying there, connecting with Brother Soul, some feeling of the embrace of the nature, desiring this in his heart, that he started feeling some pain in his hands, in his lower chest, on his feet. So then he's the few people in history that he received the marks of Christ when he was on the cross, and it is called in Italian stigmata or stigmas, and they were for real. They open up and they bleed. They open up and bleed. So he was, in the beginning, he was in distress, like, what is going on? But then he understood that it was through his mind and through his deep desire became like Jesus, that basically he was imposing, we understand now, that he was imposing with his mind that in himself. And it was the last 3 years of his life. He tried to cover his hands, his chest, everything, because he didn't want it to people to look at him like a phenomena. But of course, the closest friends, they knew this, and they were impressed for this situation, and they keep on working even harder. So according to Richard Simonetti, he had an interview. Richard Simonetti, please remind me, he was the president of the, no, who was Richard Simonetti? No. He's a Brazilian speaker, but he hasn't passed away yet. He just passed away.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Passed away?
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah. So Richard Simonetti, Brazilian Spiritist speaker.
Huge speech.
Who's afraid of death? He has that book. Well, he was in an interview.
Right there.
Yeah, this one, Richard Simonetti. So in an interview that he had for a magazine in Brazil, they were talking about different topics, and one of the questions, it was it was about Francis of Assisi, and say it seems, according to researchers, that Francis of Assisi was Saint John, Jesus' apostle. So Richard Simonetti replied, because it was disclosed in a mediumistic meeting through the spirits, that is a fact that we can say it is true. So we know that John was the beloved disciple of Jesus. Not that the other ones weren't. It's because John has this nature of being kind and mild and tender. And he was the only disciple who stayed with Jesus during the whole process of crucifixion, and stayed with him by the feet on the cross with Mary. And actually Jesus, when he's on the cross, he called John and say, "Hey, John, here is your mother. Mother, here is your son." Basically saying, I won't be here, but John will be here. And we know by John is the last one of the disciples to discarnate, and he actually wrote the gospel according to John. And we know that John also was, because he was the follower of Jesus, he was, what happened with the word salvita? When a city rejects you and you need to leave the city, when you need to leave the place where you live. Exile, thank you. Oh, thank you. I'm just thinking that is for you to see if you're paying attention. No, just kidding. So he was exiled, John. So in the medieval times, John, the spirit, accepted the mission directly from Jesus, and coming back to planet Earth, he didn't need it to come back, but he came back because we need it. We need someone with such a tenderness and love and sweetness, and also strong and charismatic, to renew the message of Jesus. So he accepted. Like all of us, of course, it was a period of time in which we don't remember, right? It's thanks God we don't remember when we reincarnate, but deep inside, he showed his true nature. He was distracted a little bit because of the circumstances of the family, they were wealthy, etc., but deep inside he knew that he had to do something different rather than to become a merchant like his father. So Francis is the reincarnation of John, and that is why also he wrote this authentic gospel again to the planet. Saint Francis wrote so many prayers. He wrote stories, anecdotes to help his phrase, to help the people. And one of the prayers is the peace prayer. We took this picture from a movie, Claire and Francis. There are so many others, like A Brother, Sun, Sister Moon by Zeffirelli. There is Francesco by Liliana Cavani. We really recommend the last one by Liliana Cavani. It's very close to the biography. So we have also in this story Clare of Assisi. Clare is like 10 years younger than Francis, a little bit younger though. So we know that Clare, in a previous reincarnation, she was Joanna of Cusa, and Francis was John. So they actually, both of them, they were following Jesus at the time Jesus was on the planet. And later on, we get to know that Clare reincarnated as Sor Teresa de la Cruz in Mexico, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz in Mexico, and later in Brazil as our dear Joanna de Angelis. So today we were praying, Joanna, you were there. Please help us to give this talk since you witnessed what happened with Francis. And she was key in creating a new Christian movement, new movement of love in Europe at the time. Well, very quick, what happened with Clare? She was also the daughter of a noble family. So pretty. But her beauty was coming from her inner self. That even people sometimes, they didn't dare to look at her face because it was so like angelic. Sweet, kind, strong, quiet, diligent, and her only love, her only desire as a Clare was to serve the poorest of the poor. So it was a difficulty there because she found in Francis a good friend, a counselor, and the family forbid this relationship. And they were friends. And they engaged in these long conversations about serving others, about building churches, about, good deeds. And the family, especially the father, he was like, oh, Clare, what are you going to do with this crazy guy? However, it got to a point that she couldn't tolerate her father's imposition. She, at the time when she was praying, she entered in ecstasies, and she started crying because she was visualizing the spirit world. So she started crying and crying and crying, crying of joy, tears of joy. So one night, she decided to escape her house. She goes to the camp because they didn't live in a house, or they have a fire camp, to the friars, the Franciscan friars. And she said, Francis, tonight I decide that I'm going to marry Jesus. And he said, okay. She has a very long gold hair, and with the medieval scissors, Francis just cut. She changed her elegant dresses for a robe, and she became the feminine version of Francis. And that is why in the movie Brother Sun, Sister Moon is actually talking about Francis and Clare. So it is both. So now we understand that this mission, it wasn't just entailed or directed to men, it was directly to women, it was directed to children, it was directed for everybody. So according to the plans, the higher plans, they have these two individuals working in spreading this new message. We're going to read very quickly the piece of prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where is the hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may know so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, For it is given that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Francis also understood his relationship with death, and he called death Sister Death, because it's the death of the physical, the corporeal body, but it's not the death of the spirit. So when he discarnated, he was joyful. And all the creatures around him in the forest, they start singing, the birds, and making noises, because it was like a song for this spirit that came out of the flesh and going back to the spirit world. So what is the message that Francis is bringing us for our current days related with nature? Sister Nature, as we already mentioned, was this connection to Mother Nature, right? To the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, all the kingdoms. And we already see the connection as if we are creatures of God, we must be connected and related. But why do we need to take care of planet Earth? What is that? Why? First, because it's the house, and he mentioned that, oikos, which is a Greek word. This is our oikos, this is our house. So we need to keep it clean and neat and beautiful. Also, because we are taking from nature the resources. So we need to replenish the resources to nature to maintain balance. But since the industrial era, we as humans, we haven't done a good job. And now we are like an emergency, right? We are in an emergency. We can see oceans in the news, oceans of trash in rivers. We can see animals being trapped in plastic, and so on and so forth. And that is the product of our actions as a society. So we were reading and trying to see, okay, so how can we foster progress? We need to foster progress in technology, in the industry, in the art, in so many areas without damaging the planet. So a Spiritist point of view, and we can find this beautifully in the book, The Messengers, chapter 42, yes, that is called Gospel in the Fields. It is Aniceto is a mentor, and Aniceto is with Andrew Luis. And they were working in Rio de Janeiro. They were doing some job, some tasks there, but they decide to go to the countryside to rest and to renew their energies. For Andrea's surprise, it's like they are not alone. There's a large group of spirits there in the fields. And by Andrea's surprise, there are some cows walking towards this group of spirits, like they're being attracted for something. So Aniceto and Andrea decide to approach the large group of spirits, and actually they were there with two purposes. One of the purposes, it was to learn to take care of the planet, to learn basic botanic, or how to plant crops, learning how to work on the planet. The other purpose was to actually be prepared for reincarnation. And it was spirits that they were going to give in a task being responsible for Mother Nature. So, I don't know, a ranger in a forest, farmer, so many people that is currently working with nature, right? So they were receiving this instruction before reincarnation. Aniceto came, is a mentor, so they kindly asked Aniceto, hey Aniceto, why you don't talk to us? Just give us a word. He prays. He started emanating this beautiful light from his chest. And the cows that were around there, they approached Aniceto. Now, if we see that picture with our human eyes, we will see a field with cows, and the cows approaching to one another, nothing in between. It's like, oh, they're cute, they're going to sleep together. Well, no, they're approached because there is this magnetism, the same that Francis of Assisi had with creatures. So it seems like these cows, and it was a donkey or something like that according to that chapter, that also approach. They feel. They're living beings. So we love them, they feel the love, like Mosi. And what else here? I don't remember. Oh, and you have a parrot, right? And what happened with the kitty? It passed away. It's in the heaven of cats. And if we love them, they feel it. And if we don't love them, they feel it too. So Aniceto started talking to this group of spirits, and to summarize his message that is in one chapter, chapter 42, he say that planet Earth already started the phase of transformation. We are moving from the planet of trials and expiations to a planet of regeneration. So we are in the transition. So in that regard, the planet is also transitioning. So there are so many things in the nation that they need to get adjusted and to prepare to receive the spirits for the new world. So there are some phenomena in nature that we are thinking, oh, these volcanoes, why they explode? Oh, the tsunamis, look, there's a tragedy. Oh, some of these things are also manipulated by higher world spirits that work with this phenomena, and that is needed for the adaptation of the planet to the new phase. Some other situations are the product of the humans leaving our footprint here on planet, right? Like the ozone, we are perforating the ozone, the atmosphere, things of the sort. So Aniceto explains that we, as humans, we need to continue our march of progress. We need to continue developing technology. We need to continue working in industry. But we need to be mindful on how we're going to do that. We need to continue building cities and towns. We cannot go backwards. We cannot go to a primitive civilization in which planet Earth was a beautiful place to breathe because it wasn't contamination. That is not feasible, that we cannot go back to that. Instead, what we need to start thinking is changing our thinking, and it's like we're going to have this new community, we're going to build this new community in this field, etc., and we're going to have some buildings and theaters and stores and supermarkets. That's okay. But in order to do that, it's very likely that we take from nature, we take down some trees, So in order to build that community, we need to give back to planet Earth. So if we took some trees from here to build this building, we need to put the trees around the community on somewhere else. So we don't create unbalance in nature. So it is not about not stopping and not destroy things. It is about being conscious on how we do that. Also, he talks about certain materials. He goes deeper and deeper. How can we recycle? we can substitute plastic for another substance. And currently we see that. We were reading this morning that a girl somewhere she decided to create plastic utensils out of the seed of the avocado. So it's biodegradable. Degradable. So we use our fork and a knife. We can use it 240 times, and then either we can eat it or we can put it in the drain and it won't contaminate. And what we see now is that also new spirits, or old spirits with new ideas, incarnating here and creating new ecological movements. The son of Will Smith, Jaden, the other day he was in the news. He is a singer and an actor. He's in his 20s. He decided to become vegan because he believes that we humans, we don't need to harm other creatures in order for us to get the nutrients. That's his personal decision. But he went a little bit further and he decided to help certain communities in Africa that they don't have water, or if they have water, the water is contaminated. So he and a group of people create filters so they can drink the water after it's filtered, and the filters are biodegradable also. And this guy, you can Google him. The last thing he's doing, he create a food truck, a vegan one, and he's not selling food. This is a specific for homeless in Los Angeles, because he believes that homeless people, so it's homeless, the words say, they don't have access to food, and when they have access to food, it's not healthy food, or it's not very healthy food. So he put, it was this week, he just put this food truck in Los Angeles, and it's been a success. And he used containers that are biodegradable, etc., etc. So we can continue with the march of progress without damaging our planet, because guess what? We need to come back. We are coming back. We are not Francis or Claire or no yet. We will. So if we want to have a beautiful planet, we need to start contributing. Part of this message of Aniceto, I'm going to read it for you. Nature has waited for humankind to offer its cooperation and understanding. She has not only waited in hope, but also in great expectation that human beings will offer comprehension and nurturing. However, the natural environment continues to suffer oppression from different manifestations of human self-interest or selfishness. God expects humanity to look beyond self-interest and embrace nature as partner, and thus attain its purpose in the glory of divine love. This is Aniceto's words. So Francis, he wrote the Canticle of Creatures. The Canticle of Creatures basically is saying, I am so amazed with all the creation. However, he wrote this when he was in such pain and despair. There was the last year of his life. He was very ill, very sick. The doctors at the time couldn't do anything. It's very likely that it was tuberculosis, but they didn't know at the time. And he was living outdoors, so he was in pain. So the first part of the canticle, that is actually, I give you the handouts in yellow, the two first paragraphs, he wrote it when he was undergoing this such a pain and suffering. And then the last it was like 2 days before he discarnate, and he includes here a paragraph about the bodily death, and also how of being part in connection with nature, it is important for us also to forgive and be forgiven. So we're going to watch a short video. It is in Italian with subtitles in English, with the Canticle of Creatures that was written by Francis, but the music, it was composed by a Italian folk artist, Angelo Banzini. Marcelo, do you mind to turn it off the light, please? Thank you.
te solo, buon Signore, si confanno gloria e onore, a te ogni laude et benedizione, a te solo si confanno che l'Altissimo tu sei, e non l'uomo degno è temento vare. Sii laudato mio Signore con le tue creature, specialmente fra te sole la sua luce, tu ci illumini di lui, che bellezza e splendore, di t'altissimo Signore porta il segno. Sii laudato mio Signore per sorelle, luna e stelle, che tu in cielo li hai formate, chiare e belle. Sii laudato per frate vento, aria, nuvole e maltempo, che alle tue creature dan sostentamento. Laudato mio Signore per sorella nostra acqua, ella è casta, molto utile e preziosa. Sii laudato per frate fuoco che ci illumina la notte, ed è bello, giocondo e robusto e forte. Laudato mio Signore per la nostra madre terra, ella è che ci sostenta e ci governa. Sii laudato mio Signore, vari frutti lei produce, molti fiori coloriti e verde l'erba. Sii laudato per coloro che perdonano per il tuo amore, sopportando infermità e tribolazione, e beati siano coloro che cammineranno in pace, che da te, buon Signore, avran corona. Sii laudato mio Signore per la morte corporale, che da lei nessun che vive può scappare, e beati saranno quelli nella tua volontà, che sorella morte non gli farà male.
Can I have lights, please? Thank you. Pope Francis took his name after Francis of Assisi. And there is
Wondershare Filmora is a user-friendly, easy-to-use video editing software
Okay.
which contains hundreds of special effects for video that allows you to easily create a unique visual effect. It allows you to import video from a variety of devices
Okay.
such as SLR, camera, tablet, cell phone.
There we go. So now we know what contamination means. Okay, there is an initiative from the Vatican that they say we can no wait another minute of our time in regard of taking care of nature. It is through love of nature, loving nature, that we are going to conquer our spirit. And this is, I'm paraphrasing Francis, the Pope Francis. So we would like to conclude the presentation with the blessing of Francis. Every time he sent his phrase to another city, another country, another region, they were in pairs, using these robes, sandals, and wearing like a little purse in which they can put some bread if they got bread on the wherever they were walking. So sometimes their shoulders, they were kind of rope because the material wasn't good, and they were enduring sun and snow and everything. So Francis, they used to kiss the shoulder of their phrase and bless them with this. May the Lord bless and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be merciful to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace. And this blessing is for all of us. So by saying this, we conclude the presentation about Francis. I don't know if there is some questions, comments. Hello.
I was always.
Leo is on.
Hello?
He said it is.
That he came in such a harsh time for the Catholic Church. And after he left also was still a dark age for a couple of centuries probably. And it's so interesting how God and Jesus actually was the one that planned all this incarnation of John to Francis. And then now you say Pope Francis, after 2,000 years, all this thing comes as a cycle to rescue the idea that at that time in Dark Age didn't make sense actually for me, that why he came in such a time that seemed to me almost a lost game, you know. But I heard that he arrived in Palestine, his congregation, his group, and because of his kindness, real kindness from the heart, they were spared the region where they construct their church, their institution. It was spared by this ongoing fight between Christian and Muslim one time, Christian the other time. And in one of the psychographs, I think, by Umberto de Campos, I think, there is a chat between John and Jesus saying, after all the dark age, all this terrible phase, and John was so frustrated because Jesus called him to say what's going on in the planet Earth. Of course he knew, but he wanted John to be aware of the problem. So what's going on in the planet Earth? What can you say about that to me? So John said, well, I think there is no hope. it's so bad. It's so bad, human being killing each other as a group in your name, and then there is all the revenge. There is all these bad things. I don't know what we can do to save this. I don't see anything. So Jesus said to him, yes, we're going to do different this time, because they cannot listen to the prophet, human being coming in the human body. Now they're gonna have message from the Spirit. So that was already coming, the Spirit's teaching. And John, if we see in the codification, he is the one, the first name in that group of spirits that help to make the codification. So you said, you keep on your job. You still have things to do. But now, as a spirit, coordinating the spirit that will send the message. And then 200 years later comes, you see, all the ecology that was not even, the name was not even created.
No.
It came, and Pope Francis is now back. So it's always a seed, I feel, that is left there, and one day will grow.
Thank you, Jessica. That's what I was thinking when you say, what is this? Why Francis and Claire? Because Claire is for another talk, right? They came in such a harsh and difficult conditions, but they needed to plant a seed, and they needed to influence the people of their time. Maybe we were among them. Maybe. Maybe by listening to Francis, one day, it got into us this desire of transformation. We don't know. So it's the same when Jesus came. It was the worst times, right? So they needed to prepare the planet Earth landscape for Jesus to come, etc., etc. So it is a process, progress, evolution, and moving to the angelic realm. It is a slow process of transformation. Thank you, Jasco. Any other comment? Do you want the microphone? The guy behind the camera. That is not Daniel this time.
Right. I thank you, Alba. You do a wonderful job bringing the stories that illustrate so well the topic that we are bringing it tonight. It's through the revelation that you brought, that through Richard Simonetti as well, that Saint Francis of Assisi was John. We know that this was a high, well-elevated spirit, reincarnating already as John, then obviously as Saint Francis of Assisi. But the questions that I always have, and this is really for us to think about ourselves and how we can leave our marks, leave our footprints in a good way. Did you feel, as in your study, that there was a turning point? Because I always like to believe that we become missionaries when we decide to become missionaries. That yes, we may be born with a let's say an ideal, but that ideal will only be concrete once we truly decide to change our lives and work on it. So when we think about that I have a mission, that mission will only be fulfilled if you in fact choose to fulfill that mission, whether you were born with it or not. So we know that his past, it was already a good one of a high elevated nature. But in the life of Saint Francis of Assisi, do you come to a turning point? Do you identify that a turning point that we can learn?
That is actually is. That's why at the beginning of the presentation we say we are going to have bring some highlights, but actually it is. So when his father paid for his rescue after his being in captivity, he was for 6-8 months there, of course, suffering. So his father paid for his rescue, and another group of young people from Assisi, because he wasn't by himself. Leo and Thomas were there, that they were good friends, and they got it immediately with him too. So he came back home, and he's ill for 3 or 4 months, and this illness is, they describe like it was an illness of the head, like he's not himself. He's standing in front of the window and he's talking with the sun, things of the sort. So when he healed, let's say, he decided to go to a peregrination to Rome. In Rome, it was a lot of beggars and lepers. And there is when he has the encounter with the lepers, that suddenly he changed his perspective, and he decided, just to test, just to understand what they were feeling, he decided to take his elegant clothes out, wear some robes thing there, and he was living as a beggar for several weeks in Rome as a test. He was testing how they were feeling. So once he was in the other side, he started his transformation. However, he thought in his mind, that his mission is supposed to be with the sword, like a knight, because that was in the time, that was the mentality. I need to go to the crusades because I'm listening the call of God. But his turning point was there, and that's why he couldn't make it to the crusade. He couldn't, and he returned. Yeah. Well, he will be killed. Yes, and the story of the Sultan, the biographies, they say they don't have like facts to say that, because Francis, he wanted to finish with the crusades. It was a horrible thing, a lot of blood. Jesus didn't came here to kill people, right? And they were killing in the name of Jesus. So no. This is a bad propaganda for the master. Let us put it in those words. So he decided to go to see the Sultan, and he talked with the troops, the crusaders, and he said, wait here. I'm going to talk with the Sultan. And according with, legends, they say he talked to the guy. He say, I am here in peace. So after sometimes the crusaders were removed from the area, and the only ones who were allowed to stay there and actually to build a monastery, it was the Franciscans, and they are currently preserving the Muslim culture inside of the monastery, which is interesting. We would like to really finish this by reminding all of us that we are currently working in the notebook art cover project. So just to let you know, we already finished sewing all the covers, and now we are in the phase of decoration. And this is an outreach campaign that the SSB is doing. To bring smiles to kids in Mozambique. And we are working with Fraternity Without Borders. The other reach out activity that we are doing, and if we wanted to follow Francis or Claire's footsteps and look for our brothers and sisters in need, Francis, he had a saying, please allow me say first in Spanish, lo poco que deseo, lo deseo poco. The few that I want it little. I would just want little things. So in Anne Arundel County, there are some immigrant families that are coming, and they don't have school supplies, and they don't have anything. Sometimes they don't have even a place to live. They are just sleeping in someone's couch. So we create a list of needs for elementary, middle, and high students, as well for families that they have babies and toddlers. And the way we are going Basically, we have the lids here, and there is a lids on the back. So if you feel like you would like to donate a box of crayons or stickers or whatever you think, we are receiving the donations here at the center. We have a small basket there. And Albita is going to take the donations to Anne Arundel County, to the International Welcome Center for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Since I work there, I work with immigrant families. That's my day-to-day life. The deadline, we are going to put like August 15, so we have a deadline, but the families we already got a donation from a member of the SSB that she went to Annapolis and dropped the donations, and they're gone. It was a big bag, and it's gone. So because every day we have the families, every day. Most of them are coming from Central America, but also we have families from Africa that are in need. Okay? So thank you for your time, and now